Today we're going to be looking at creating forms and how to attach those forms to a client or a case. So to get started, you can navigate over to the Manage Forms link. Click on that. And we're just going to create a new form. So forms are just a series of questions and responses that a user can give. So it's very linear in nature. So we're going to give a form a title, and we're just basically going to be recreating this initial client intake just as an example. The form title is what's going to show up on the case or the client, so just give an indicator of what this form is. You can give additional information about this form in the form description field. Something very simple. Auto attach is a way to auto attach the form. You can select all clients, and so this will, anytime you create a new client, this will attach the form to that client's profile for someone to fill out. You can optionally select add to existing clients. If you don't check this box, this form will not be added to previous clients, only new clients going forward. If you do select this box, then the form will go back and auto attach to clients that are already in the system. Same applies to all cases. If you select all cases, then the form will be attached to all new cases that you create. Optionally, you can check the box add to existing cases, and it will go back and add the form to all previous cases. Obviously, it's not going to fill out the forms for you, so you would have to go back and fill those out, but the forms would be there if someone opened up the case, and they might notice that the form has not been filled out and gather that information at the time. You can also select case types. So imagine that we were creating a form for an immigration pre-check. So what we might want to do is say to auto attach this form to all immigration cases that I create. So anytime that you create a case with a case type of immigration, then this form would get added to it. And same thing, we can add that to all previously created immigration cases. If you select something and decide you don't want that, you can click on Clear Selection. So even though you don't have anything auto-attached, or the form auto-attaching to anything, you can still easily add this form to a client or a case, and we'll show you how to do that later on. So for now, I'm not going to auto-attach anything. So now we want to define the data that we're going to be collecting in this form. Something for a new client that we might be interested in is their father's name. So you'll notice that also up here the word row changed to the row title. This is just to help you find rows that you want to edit later on. Please get, and the row description is just a way to get additional or give the user additional information about the information that they're trying to gather. So you might want to be specific on whether it's a biological father or not, the name that they're collecting here. Required is just that. It will say whether the field is required when someone is filling out the form. You'll notice this little exclamation badge that shows up when I select required. That's just an indicator for you that that field is required. Next we have row type. And so this is just how you're collecting data from a user. So father's name is pretty simple. We just want someone to type in a value. So a single line text input will suffice for that. A default value is going to be present when someone first starts filling out the form. So this doesn't really apply here, but imagine that we had a field with a row title of account number, and all of our account numbers started with S101-. So we could set a default value here, and then every time that someone starts creating this form, S101- would already be filled in for the user. So that's it for this row. A couple other things to note. If you click on this arrow, it will just kind of collapse this row to make room for very large rows or forms. The order is the order in which the fields will display. We recommend doing these in increments of 10 in case you want to go back later on and add new fields. You can click this trash can to delete a row, and that will just make it transparent until you click create, and then it will remove it. Clicking it again will undelete it, and all your values will still be there until you click on create. Once you click on create it or update it, then the values will be gone permanently. We'll go ahead and add a new row, and I just want to go over all the different row types. So now we have another field here, and we want to do a multi-line input. So maybe we want to do something like we want to gather the user's name aliases. Are you known by any other name? And this will allow them a text box that will allow them to do multiple lines, and perhaps on each one of those lines you can specify a different name that the user is known by. Again, we could check required or set a default value. Next, we want to make use of a radio button. So this is a single selection. The user is filling out the form. They have a list of options that they could choose, but you only want them to select one of those choices. So we'll just use a contrived example here, and we'll ask them for their favorite color. So we need to, again, there's your row description. You can say whether it's required or not. And now we want to create the options that the user has to make a choice from. The option title is what's presented to the user when they're filling out the form. And then the option value is what is actually saved behind the scenes. If you're using forms to fill out PDFs, the option value is a value that's going to be transposed onto the PDF. The option value type is how the option value is handled. Most of the time you're just going to use text, but you also have the options of number and Boolean. These are going to come into play when PDFs require a specific formatted value. For example, you might have a question on there that says, have you ever committed a crime? As your question. And then here, your response might be yes, but the PDF might require the value of true, and that needs to actually be transposed as a true or false Boolean value, not just text field. Same thing as a number. The PDF might require a number rather than text. So your option value might be 1, and we have to specify that that value needs to be handled as a number. Again, most of the time you're going to be using text. If you're just collecting data, your option value might end up being the exact same as your option title. If so, just fill them in the same. Option description, you can just give additional data on what this option value or this option is. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on why that might be important. The default checkbox will say what option is selected by default. So when they first start filling out the form, if you want blue to be selected by default, you could select default and blue will be checked. You can click add option to add more options. You also have the same thing for ordering these fields. So imagine that I now want blue to show up below green. When I save my form, these will reverse order and green will be first. We can continue adding options as we need to. Let's add another row. So now we want, we'll create a checkbox. And we're going to ask them if they've ever been convicted of a crime. And we want to give them some options. So the checkbox will allow them to choose multiple responses. Notice here that behind the scenes I really just want to store the assault value. I don't really need aggravated assault. And you can go on and add as many options here as you would like. We'll add one more. So this is a drop-down box. And we'll ask them what their gender is. Okay. So if that's your completed form, then you can click on Create. Here we go. Let me change this to 2. Okay. So now we have our form created. We can go back in and edit it as we need to. I now want to go and add this form to a case. So I'm going to select a case here. And you can see that this case already has our original initial client intake on there. The client intake would most likely be attached over here to the client's profile. So since we didn't select the auto attach features, we have to attach this manually. If we had selected auto attach and also checked add to existing clients, it would show up here for us already. But since we didn't do that, we can add it by clicking the little form icon to the right, and you can see that we have not attached this form, so we can go ahead and attach that, and now it will show up here. We'll go ahead and click on Start. Notice that we didn't order some of our fields, so they're going to show up at the top before the ones that we created. So here's our questions. Have you ever been convicted of a crime? And we have the option to select both of them if the client had so been convicted of such crimes. It's going to ask us for our gender. We can select one of those options. Any name aliases. This is our multi-line text input box. And here's our favorite color option. And we had selected blue as our default, so that's going to be showing as our default color. I'm going to go ahead and submit that. And as you can see, now there's a completed date on here that shows when these responses were stored. We can click on View to view results from previously. You can also change these if you want and submit the answers again, and the completed date will update. That's it for now for forms. There's also some advanced options for filling out PDFs with forms. You can see our other training for that.